In 1950, if you flew over the land that is now the United Arab Emirates, here is what you would see: desert, sand dunes stretching in every direction, a handful of small fishing villages on the coast, pearl diving boats bobbing in the shallow, turquoise waters of the Gulf, mud brick homes, no roads connecting the settlements, no electricity, no running water, no schools, no hospitals, a population of perhaps 80,000 people, living almost exactly as their ancestors had lived for 1,000 years. Today, that same stretch of land is home to over 10 million people. It contains the world's tallest building, the world's busiest international airport, and one of the highest per capita incomes on the planet. Its cities are visited by 25 million tourists every year. Its airline connects every major city in the world. The transformation of the UAE is not just a remarkable story. It is the fastest national transformation in human history, and it begins not in the age of oil and glass towers, but in the sands of ancient Arabia. Ancient Arabia. Before the UAE existed, the land now called the UAE has been inhabited for at least 5,000 years. Archaeological sites like Al Ain, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, show evidence of sophisticated Bronze Age settlements with irrigation systems, trade networks, and permanent architecture going back to 3000 BC. The people of this region were not simply wandering desert tribes. They were farmers, traders, and sailors who connected the civilizations of Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, and East Africa through the waters of the Arabian Gulf. The region sat at a geographical crossroads. The Gulf was one of the ancient worlds. Great trading highways, frankincense and copper moved through these waters. Later, silk and spices from the east passed through Gulf ports on their way to Mesopotamia and Persia. The tribes of this region developed a deep knowledge of the sea, navigation, fishing, and above all, pearl diving. The natural pearls of the Arabian Gulf were among the finest in the world. For centuries, long before oil, long before skyscrapers, pearls were the wealth of this coast. Arab pearl divers would descend to depths of 12 to 15 meters, holding their breath, picking oysters from the seabed by hand. The season lasted for months. The work was brutal and dangerous. Sharks, jellyfish, the constant pressure of deep water on the lungs. But the pearls those divers brought up were sold across the world to the courts of India, the jewelers of Paris, the markets of Constantinople. For these communities, the sea was not just a resource, it was identity. Britain and the Trucial starters in the early 19th century. British power was expanding across the Indian Ocean. The East India Company controlled India and was determined to keep the sea lanes between India and Britain secure. The Gulf was a problem. Arab seafarers, particularly from the Qawasin tribe, based around what is now Ras, Al-Khaimah and Sharjah, were raiding British and Indian trading vessels. The British called it piracy. The Arabs considered it legitimate warfare against a foreign power that was disrupting their trade. In 1820, Britain sent a naval expedition that destroyed several Arab fleets and coastal settlements. A series of treaties followed. The sheikhdoms of the coast, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Shah Jajman, Al Quwain, Ras Al Khaimah, and Fujairah signed agreements with Britain pledging to stop attacks on shipping. In exchange, Britain offered protection from outside threats. These became known as the Trucial states, from the word truce. They were not colonies in the formal sense. They were protectorates, independent sheikhdoms, whose foreign affairs and defense were managed by Britain, while internal governance remained with the ruling families. For over 150 years, this arrangement held. But in the 1960s, Britain began withdrawing from its commitments east of Suez. The global network of bases and protectorates that had underpinned British power in Asia and the Gulf. In 1968, Britain announced it would withdraw from the Gulf completely by 1971. The small sheikdoms were suddenly on their own. But by then, everything had already changed. Because oil had arrived. Oil changes, EVA writer, A. Shanjitha. First oil concession in the region was granted in Abu Dhabi in 1939, but the Second World War interrupted exploration, and it was not until 1958 that significant oil was discovered offshore in Ma. In my imagination, the world seems to pause. First oil concession in the region was granted in Abu Dhabi in 1939, but the Second World War interrupted exploration, and it was not until 1958 with Selmaray. Abu Dhabi's waters, the scale of what lay beneath the desert and the Gulf floor was almost incomprehensible. Abu Dhabi alone sat on top of what would prove to be approximately 10% of the world's total proven oil reserves, the sixth largest in the world. Dubai found smaller but still significant oil deposits in 1966. In the 1960s, the oil money began to flow, and everything began to change. The ruler of Abu Dhabi at the time, Sheikh Zayed, was cautious. He had lived through poverty his entire life. He trusted the new wealth with difficulty. He kept the oil revenues modest and the development slow. His brother had a different vision. Sheikh Zayed, the father of Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, is the central figure in the story of the UAE. Without him, the federation almost certainly would not exist. In 1966, the ruling family of Abu Dhabi replaced Sheikh Zayed with his brother Zayed, not through violence, but through a family decision that the enormous opportunity presented by oil wealth required a different kind of leadership. Zayed was different in almost every way from the cautious Zayed. He had spent years as the ruler's representative in the Al Ain region, governing a remote area, building relationships with the Bedouin tribes, understanding the land and the people deeply. He was known for his accessibility. Anyone could come to his majlis, his open court, and speak directly to him. He had no interest in personal luxury. He was interested in his people. From the moment he took power in Abu Dhabi, Zayed began spending oil, revenues on infrastructure, schools, hospitals, roads, housing. He understood intuitively that oil would not last forever, but that if he invested in education and development now, he could build something that would outlast the oil. But his vision went beyond Abu Dhabi. Zayed believed that the small sheikdoms of the Trucial coast were too small and too vulnerable to survive independently in the modern world. With Britain withdrawing its protection, they needed each other. They needed unity. He spent years in patient diplomacy, meeting with the rulers of the other sheikdoms, building trust, negotiating the terms of a federation that would bring them together while preserving each sheikh's authority over his own territory. Not every ruler was enthusiastic. Some feared losing independence. Some had rivalries with their neighbors that went back generations. The negotiations were long and often difficult, but Zayed persisted. December 2, 1971, the UAE is Bioranon. December 2nd, 1971, one day after, Britain formally ended its protection of the Trucial states. 6 sheikhdoms declared themselves a single nation: the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Sharjah, Ajman, Al Quwain, Fujairah. Sheikh Zayed became the first president. The ruler of Dubai, Sheikh Rashid bin Zayed Al Maktoum, became vice president. Ras Al Khaimah joined the federation in February 1972, completing the 7 Emirates that make up the UAE today. The country that was born on December 2nd, 1971, had no standing army worth speaking of, no established currency, no unified legal system, limited infrastructure outside Abu Dhabi and Dubai, a population of under 200,000 Emirati citizens. It was, in almost every practical sense, starting from nothing. What it had was oil, and it had Zayed the Terrarian Safor Matyewan. What happened in the decades after 1971 remains almost without parallel in modern history. Oil revenues funded an infrastructure build-out of breathtaking speed. Roads connected the Emirates, ports were built, universities were established, healthcare became free for citizens, subsidized housing was provided. The standard of living of Emirati citizens transformed within a single generation. Dubai, which had smaller oil reserves than Abu Dhabi, made a calculated decision early: diversify before the oil runs out. Under Sheikh Rashid and then his son, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Dubai positioned itself as a global hub for trade, finance, tourism, and aviation. The Jebel Ali port, opened in 1979, became one of the largest ports in the world. Emirates Airline, founded in 1985 with 2 aircraft and a vision, grew into one of the world's most respected carriers. Dubai International Airport became the busiest international airport on earth by passenger numbers. The Burj Khalifa, opened in 2010 at 828 meters, became the tallest building in human history. A country that did not exist in 1971 built the world's tallest building within 40 years. The legacy Sheikh Zayed died in November 2004. He had led the UAE for 33 years. The transformation he oversaw, from scattered desert sheikhdoms to a unified nation of global significance, is one of the most remarkable stories of leadership in the 20th century. He is remembered not just as a ruler, but as a father. The title given to him formally is Baba Zayed, Father Zayed, by the Emirati people. Today, the UAE faces new questions. How does it reduce dependence on oil entirely? How does it build a knowledge economy? How does it navigate a complicated regional neighborhood? How does it balance its global openness with its traditional values? These are questions for the next generation of Emirati leaders, but they are questions asked from a position of extraordinary strength, built in 50 years, from empty desert, from pearl divers to the Burj Khalifa, from mud brick fishing villages to the crossroads of the world.